Hey there everybody, it's George from DinosaurGeorge.com answering the questions I get from all around the world. And this first one comes from my buddy Hamzah from London, England. Hamzah says, hello Dino Man. Hello Hamzah Man. I'm Hamzah from Facebook and thanks for answering my question in video number 56. It is my pleasure. This is going to be video number 76, so it's been 20 questions since I got back to yours. So I'm glad I've got another one for you. I've got two small questions, buddy. What do you think about Jurassic Park number 1, 2, and 3? Please try to answer my question in your hilarious German accent. Well, Hamzah, what would make you think I'm going to answer your question like a German? Do you really think you are that important? All right, Hamzah. Look, I got to tell you, Jurassic Park number 1 was the coolest. For me, I was stunned. I could not believe it was that amazing. It felt like I was looking at living, breathing dinosaurs. So it's hard to beat the first one simply because it was so amazing. The second one, I didn't like it so much. It had some neat parts, but I didn't like it as much. I liked the third one quite a bit, mostly because it had that big Spinosaurus that was in there. It was huge and it was very scary. I want that rabbit. Where's your wishbone? Okay, I did that, Hamzah, for you. All right. Finally, Hamzah says, my second question, who do you think was the king of the Triassic? Because I know T-Rex is the king of the Cretaceous and Allosaurus is the king of the Jurassic, but who is the king of the Triassic? I hope everything is fine for you and your family. Have a good day. Well, thank you, buddy. Everything is fine for me and my family. Same to you. Wow, the Triassic is tough because there was a lot of pretty big dinosaurs at the end of the Triassic. Plateosaurus is a big dude. And so just from size, Plateosaurus would have been big, might have been considered the king. But I gotta say wow, this is tough, man. This is tough. Maybe Coelophysis. Maybe Coelophysis or maybe Herrerasaurus would be a good choice, simply because they seem to be able to outcompete everybody around them. Now, they weren't giants by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe those guys would be the king if you're talking about dinosaurs. I know there was some big crocodilian-looking things back then. Maybe those guys would be considered the king. I don't know. I'd like to hear from some of you folks as to what you think who would be the king of the Triassic. That's a good question, Hamzah. Good talking to you, buddy. All right. Emilio from Lugo, Spain. He says, hi, George. I wish you a Happy New Year. Emilio, Happy New Year to you, too. Anyway, my question. Do you think larger dromaeosaurs kept their feathers or lost them like ostriches do with their leg feathers? That's a pretty cool question, Emilio. We know that velociraptors had wing feathers, and things like Deinonychus or Dromaeosaurus were close enough biologically and in size that we could assume they did. Wow, that's a great question. Here's what I think about feathers when it comes to these raptors, Emilio. I do think that when the baby raptors, regardless of their adult size, were born, I believe they probably would have been covered in very fluffy down, much like you see in an infant penguin or an infant ostrich. Those feathers can be great to help regulate body temperature, even if they're living in environments that are hot and humid. You still, when you're little, a protection is a very important thing when it comes to losing body heat or gaining too much excess external heat. The feathers could act like a protection against excess heat. So I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't completely covered in feathers. Now, as they matured, my guess is they probably lost a lot of those feathers and probably kept simply the feathers that were used for display. Those on the arms, maybe around the neck, around the face, maybe at the tail. But it's hard to say whether they molted, which some birds do. Some birds go through a molting period where they lose their feathers and replace them. I don't know, man. That's a brilliant question, Emilio, and you got me stumped. It's a great question, though. All right, Kenny from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Do you think Spinosauruses and other Spinosauruses could spar? Bears do the same thing, so I figured, why not Spinosaurus? Nice work, Kenny. There is nothing more important for paleontology than to look at modern animals as a window into the creatures that lived before. And if we see modern animals sparring, to use your word, there's no reason to believe that dinosaurs didn't do the same thing. I think it would be an important part of a dinosaur to be able to spar or fight with other members of its own race, species, because It needs to be able to fight for territory, for dominance in a group, for reproductive purposes. All of those things are very important for animals today, and there's no reason to believe they weren't important for animals back then. So yes, I do believe that Spinosaurus would have certainly fought with other members of its own family in an effort for dominance. Okay, Nick from Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, DG, today I have two interesting questions. Well, good, Nick. I'm glad to hear that. Question number one, what do you think was the function of the dome on Pachycephalosaurus' skull? Nick, I am not a proponent of the idea that they butted heads with each other. I've looked at the shape of those domes. They're just too round and too almost pointy, and it would be almost impossible, in my opinion, to run at somebody and hit somebody head on and not glance off. And if you've ever seen the skull of Pachycephalosaurus, you'll notice they've got a lot of horns around the base of that skull. And so that would mean you'd literally put your eye out. You'll put your eye out, kid. It would literally mean that you'd put your eye out. So maybe they lowered heads and shoved, but what I believe they used that dome for was for protection, for defense. And I one time read that somebody proposed that Pachycephalosaurs may have been omnivores. And if so, they may have used that dome as a way to debilitate prey. I don't know for certain if, in fact, they were omnivorous, but I do believe that that was a weapon. It's much too massive. It's much too powerful. And their body design is perfectly suited to lower that head and ram at a high rate of speed. But again, because of its rounded shape, I do not believe they were ramming heads with other members of their family for dominance. I don't think that's what they did. His second question was, could Allosaurus, a Chinese species of Therizinosaur, just have been an Asian Nothronicus, just like Tarbosaurus is an Asian T-Rex? Please respond. This would mean a lot to me because I've been thinking about these questions for a long time. Well, Nick, I'm happy to respond to you, and I'm glad you're thinking about things paleontology-wise. I have seen the skeletal drawings of both Allosaurus and Nothronicus, and they do look very similar. But I've not studied them deeply enough to really know if they are similar enough to be considered the same species. In other words, Allosaurus may not be considered the Asian Nothronicus because they may have enough differences. When you look at Tarbosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex, there's enough similarities to make that assessment. And unfortunately, buddy, I just have not studied enough about these two dinosaurs. Finally, my buddy Zack from Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Dear George, I got two questions. Well, Zack, you only get to ask one question every 40 years, so I'm going to only answer one. I'm absolutely kidding you, Zack. You know you're my buddy. I would be glad to answer as many as you want to send me. All right. When did Dromaeosaurus die out? They seem to have gone out at the end of the Cretaceous. I don't know if they made it all the way to the very end because I've only seen some Dromaeosaurs from up in... oh, you know what? I take it back. There was a dromaeosaur that was found among a bunch of Edmontosaurus in South Dakota towards the very end of the Cretaceous. So I would say, with some sense of certainty, they made it all the way to the end of the Cretaceous. Now, if you're talking about Dromaeosaurus proper, if you're talking about just the family of raptors, absolutely, they made it up until the end. And Zach's second question is, in which T-Rex do you think looked cooler? The T-Rex in Jurassic Park or the T-Rex in Jurassic Fight Clubs? Doggone it, Zach. You had to ask me that, man. That's tough. Even though, of course, I helped design the T-Rex in Jurassic Fight Club, and I owe it very, I keep it very near and dear to me, I've got to say that the Tyrannosaurus in Jurassic Park was much better because they had a much greater budget and much more time to put theirs together. I have to admit, I like theirs better. All right, you guys, if you have a question, go to my website, dinosaurgeorge.com. Click on the Ask Dinosaur George page, fill out the form and submit it. We will do our best to answer it, but just a reminder to everybody, we get so many questions in a day that sometimes we delete them without even reading them because we get that many. So if you've written to me and I haven't responded, please just continue to try back, and I hope we get a chance to answer yours as well. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourself, take care of all the people around you. For you young people, practice that reading and always use good manners, and I will see you guys again soon.